Shania writes in, and Shania says, I don't understand. We are going to jump right in and bring it on with some wonderful questions that you've had the opportunity to log on to CBN.com and ask Pat about. So Shania writes in, and Shania says, I don't understand my husband. He will pray with me 1 minute and then play violent video games with his friends the next minute. Somehow he thinks it's okay to immerse himself in these games. Do you think a game is just a game, even if it's violent and has sexual references in it?
Shania, you know, those video games just aren't games.
Yeah.
You are absorbed in those things. I mean, totally absorbed. And along with the violence, I mean, you're acting out the violence. Maybe he's got violent tendencies, but you sure do act them out, and it gets to be a habit, you know. So look at those kids out there in that school in Colorado. They watch video games, and they learned how to shoot people in the head, and then they shot their fellow students in the head. There's no question about it. Those things are bad, all right?
And you don't want to defile your spirit, too. I think that's the thing that people don't realize is when it comes to television, not just video games, if there are things that are on there that's just perverse and perverted, that gets into your spirit. You got to get that stuff out so that you can walk in the purity of heart, purity of mind, purity of spirit. I'm going to bring it over the email questions. We're going to begin with L'Oreal, who writes in and says, I have a 50-year-old sister who plays virtual reality games on her computer nearly all day. She's met people in the game from all over the world who she considers friends. I'm concerned about her intense interest in it. Her husband has pretty much given up on competing with this computer world for her attention. What should we do?
She needs professional help. She is going into a fantasy world, and you know, it's like people into porn. It's not pornography, but it's much the same thing. And this obviously is more interesting to her than interaction with her husband. Now, somebody ought to begin to say, well, how is it with your husband? You know, she's only 50. Yeah. She's not exactly old. Yeah. And at that time, they should be having a vibrant life together. So it may be her husband is not as warm and sharing as he might be, and she's retreated into this fantasy world. But it's addictive, just like pornography is addictive. It's not unpleasant. It is pleasant. So now she meets people who aren't demanding at all. And they don't demand anything of her. They just want to, you know, talk and chat and so forth. She probably needs some professional help, but it may be her husband and she need marital counseling. What else?
Yeah, bring it on. This is Javier, Pat, who says, is it a sin to play video games? Today, most of the games are violent, have sexual content, blood, and rude language. Most teenagers and kids say it's normal and fun, and some people say to leave them alone, let them grow up and explore the world. What does God's word say about people letting kids play these games? Is it a sin?
Well, there were no video games when God's word was written. But it does say, I would put my eyes on no evil thing. And the blood and gore, you know, I mean, it's just, they're horrible, and they exceed one another in how much gore and violence and profanity. You cannot immerse yourself in that kind of stuff without it changing you. And sooner or later, you get desensitized toward real human beings. And that's one of the reasons some of these kids take a gun and, you know, it's kind of like blow that sucker away. Well, that's what they see in one of those video games. And,
well, and just general anger in the world today seems... Driving your car down the street can be a dangerous endeavor.
The Apostle Paul said, whatsoever things of beauty, whatever things lovely, whatever of good report, that be any virtue and to be any praise, think on those things. And that's what you're supposed to think about. And if you absorb your mind in this other, it'll destroy you, because as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. All right, what's next?
We want to bring it on right now with some of the email questions that you've sent in. Pat, this first one is from Nathaniel, who says, what do you think the Bible has to say about video games? Is there a way to interpret the Bible for, quote, virtual sins? I'm not the type of person who would do half of the things in games in real life, but does God see it as sin if we enjoy them in a virtual setting?
Your spirit is what God's concerned about, and what is your spirit active in? Jesus said, if you look on a woman with the thoughts of lust in your heart, you've committed adultery with her. So that's a virtual sin. if you have on those games. I've never played a video game. I hate to tell you, that shows my age maybe, but have you ever played one?
Yeah, I'm terrible at it.
Oh, you're terrible at it? Yeah.
It's really a hand-eye thing, but
well, I mean, shooting and things like that, but I think mayhem, killing, Grand Theft Auto, some of those, they get pretty bizarre. And so if you're murdering somebody in cyberspace, in a sense, you're performing the act, you like it or not. Here's the danger with this stuff, and it has to do with television, books, everything. You lose your sensitivity to God. And if you're keen for the Lord, you're in prayer, your spirit is attuned to Him, you're seeing miracles in your life, you're listening to the voice of God, that stuff will chop off your access, and you will grow dead in your heart. That's the danger of all of this. That's the danger of it. That's what you have to remember. It isn't God's going to send you to hell or anything. You'll just miss out on that precious presence of God that He wants to give to those who love Him. That's the whole deal. All right.
That's true.